Absolutely love it.
Cool. I think we're recording. Awesome.
Nice, buddy.
Sweet. All right. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the first recording of 20 minutes or 20 minutes tops with Train and G Money. I am Train, your host, Pain Train. I'm here with G and Greenville Packer, and we are pumped. It's been in the works for a couple of years and finally ready to kind of meet weekly, just kind of do like a quick recap and kind of see where things stand with the goings on of the league. So G, how's everything going, man? Kind of where is your thoughts on where the league's at, where your personal team is at, any general takeaways with anything? So yeah, just kick us off.
Well, this is hopefully the inaugural weekly start to the Other League podcast. TBD on the name. We're kind of still working through some new stuff here for the league, but it took us a couple weeks to get this off the ground. But I know we've been talking about it for probably before the draft between you and I know you've had some thoughts on it. So I'm really glad we got this off the ground and can have some fun with it on a weekly basis and bring some guys in each week, hopefully maybe, and get a little round robin every now and again with some other managers just to keep it fresh for everybody. But yeah, I mean, just to kind of kick it off, I mean, since we missed the first 2 weeks, we're going to kind of just start with week 3 here and kind of kick it off from there. Just personal thoughts on my own team. I mean, geez, we are just cellar dwellers right now. It is just
we are the only two winless teams currently.
It's tough. It's tough to look at, to be honest with you. But yeah, I mean, obviously the Cooper Cup thing personally hurts, just to jump off that. And then I've had some Bengals just not looking like they were the last couple of years. So yeah, I mean, we can kind of run through some matchups. I mean, I could start with my one, I guess, to kind of kick it off. Another sub 100 point week for Greenville. Haven't touched the century mark in 3 weeks.
Really? Have you not? You haven't got over 100 yet?
No, it's pretty bad. Yeah.
Okay.
3 straight weeks of a guy putting up 0 for me. That's also could be a record for me. Josh Reynolds.
It's brutal.
0. Yeah. So pretty rough go here. Obviously Riggs not with a super impressive week at 104. Really the story of that matchup was just Raheem Mostert. Just an insane game. And crazy enough, he wasn't even their top scorer in terms of fantasy, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
That offense is just looking unstoppable. It really is. Obviously their backup had, I think, 51 or 52.
52. He had 4 touchdowns.
Insane. Tyreek just pretty much picking up where he left off. And Tua looks great, man. If he can stay healthy, I think that team's got a real shot to do something special this year, for sure.
Yep. Yeah, and I wanted to touch on your team. In terms of, putting up a 0 3 weeks in a row that's got to be a record. I mean, that's just absolutely brutal, especially without like an injury. Like just like a straight 0 is brutal. I will say at least some silver lining for you. The Bengals actually started pretty slow last year, and then as a team overall, kind of hit their groove mid-season. And then they kind of, toward the end of the year, they were just kind of a juggernaut. Jamar Chase started super slow last year also. And I think it's tough because didn't last year you also started slow and then you rattled off like 9 straight wins?
It definitely sounds familiar. I mean, I don't know if it was a 0-2 or an 0-3 start, but yeah, I was hoping to kind of tread water, obviously, until hopefully Cup comes back healthy. I mean, it does look like the Rams receivers are at least producing. So, I mean, if he does come back healthy, I do think he'll, put up some stats. But I mean, pretty much rounds 1 through 4 in my draft right now it's tough. I mean, we got Cup out. My second round, Higgins has not really, besides, week 2, really shown anything. I mean, again, slow start for the Bengals. Obviously, Burrow in round 4, and then Jones looked great, but obviously not having him. Hopefully, this week we'll see the Packers kind of, come back to life. I mean, based on the name, I got a lot of stock in Green Bull and
Yeah.
Green Bay
I
this
think
year.
I think I think he's playing on Thursday. He practiced today.
I think he is going to be back. Probably going to slot maybe possibly Romeo Dobbs as well, but I know Watson
Yeah.
might be back, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Thursday night's going to be a big game for me this week. I got Aaron, I got the Wet Bandits, and they're looking good.
Yeah.
The Bandits got a
Yeah.
nice team.
Yeah. Good team. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of a pivotal week, obviously, for both of us being 0-3. You
Yeah,
know,
take it away from your matchup from week 3. I
yeah,
love to hear it.
just to kind of to wrap up your team. I know also kind of going into silver lining, I don't want to just like beat your team down. Just going with points 4. Currently you're in last with points 4. And also points against, like you don't I think you're kind of middle of the pack there.
Nothing
So
special. Yep.
yeah, so still got a lot of fab left, and so can make some moves. But yeah, definitely a huge week for you. I think the latest report I saw was that Cooper Kupp is hopeful to play in week 5 when he comes off IR.
Did read that as well. I mean, we'll
So
see. I mean, fingers
yeah.
crossed, but
Yep.
we might be staring down 0-4 at that point, which is
Yeah.
a really huge mountain to climb at that
Yeah,
point. But
it's tough. Yeah, 0-3, and then if you get to 0-4, then it's real rough. And then if you're at 0-5, you're pretty much done.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, kind of going to my team, also obviously 0-3. I have about 70 more points than you,
Mhm.
and points 4. Points against, once again, I believe I'm third in the league in points against. I know I was
against. Yep.
I was first in points against last year, and also second in points. So kind of going with the theme of always having the most points against. It seems like it's a yearly thing for me, but yeah, it's kind of tough. I think my record could be a little bit better. I think the first week I lost by 1 to Aaron.
Mhm.
And then week 2, Anthony Richardson was on track. Anthony Richardson had 17 points in, I think, midway through the second quarter with 2 rushing touchdowns. Then he goes out with concussion.
Yep.
So, I think, if you extrapolate, he was on pace to have a monster game. And then this past week, just didn't have the horses. Rick's team kind of went off, but it's really shaping up, kind of a general thing with this year. It's really shaping up that if you don't have a Dolphin, right, or a 49er right now, you're kind of behind the pack.
You're not wrong. I mean,
I know
Jefferson obviously just, in terms of your roster, at least, I mean, the guy is just showing why he was kind of the consensus one. I mean, the guy just produces. I mean, it doesn't matter what that team's really doing, in terms of a record. He is just, I mean, 24, 25, and 27, I think was what I saw this, be kind of looking at it before we got on here. Amazing. I mean, the guy.
And it's huge to have that. It was pretty tricky. With my draft, it's the first time I've ever had to navigate, obviously not having a couple mid-round picks, making the draft pick trades that I did last year, really shelling out to try to make that championship run. Ended up working out, of course. So obviously pumped about that, but really kind of put me behind the 8 ball. Really needed to hit on some of those mid-rounders. Taking Garrett Wilson, losing Aaron Rodgers just is a gut punch. And then, he's going from potentially a top 8 quarterback in the league to he's arguably one of the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen. So kind of being tough. And then, just basically needing to go 0 RB there. Just kind of piecing it together with mid-round running backs. Montgomery getting hurt, kind of really hurt, but he should be back this week, I think. But yeah, we're just kind of treading water right now. Anthony Richardson, I think, should be back this week. And then
he's looking like a great pick. I really, Cam Newton-esque is certainly a pretty favorable comparison for that guy for sure.
And I love that offense. I really love
the
Colts offense. They look real good. And even if they get JT back, I know he said he might not play for them again, but TBD on that.
What do you think of the trade? Your trade with the Bastards, obviously, kind of ending your
going into
your
the
roster
trade.
a little bit.
So full transparency, Logue offered me the deal initially. It was, I can't remember what the initial deal was, but Brian Robinson was the main target. And then I think I countered trying to get Evan Ingram, because that was basically one of my plans for the first 3 weeks, was trying to get an upgrade and a steady presence at tight end.
Hmm.
I've just been basically piecing it together, trying to hit lightning in a bottle with Juwan Johnson, who I thought would have at least a touchdown at this point. And then obviously shelling out for Zach Ertz. He, of course, gets the 2.6 points for, two catches for 6 yards.
Yeah, tough after the first
And
2 weeks because he
yeah,
was
yeah,
targets. The targets were there for the guy. So yeah, not a
yep,
bad flyer.
yeah.
Yeah, Juwan
So
Johnson's is a mystery. I thought, he coming
yeah,
into the season, he could have been just kind of a plug and play top 12, top 14, maybe tight end, but just doesn't Saints don't look like they're really finding anyone besides Thomas and Olave at this point, at
yep,
least in the passing game. So
yeah, yep.
it's is
Yeah.
what it is.
So so I kind of was going after Ingram. Logue, wanted to hang on to him, understandably. He's a, locked in weekly top 8 tight end. But so then we kind of just kept working, kind of just kept figuring out a deal. Obviously it helps for me with Kamara coming back this week.
The
I
Jerome
think
Ford thing's massive for you.
yep, he's gonna slot into, yeah, and Jerome Ford, it's RIP
Sure.
Nick Chubb, just brutal, brutal.
Sure.
But it's not as bad as everyone said.
Yeah.
So that's a
Yep.
silver lining. But yeah, Jerome Ford kind of slotting into my weekly RB2 slot, or RB3 flex, with Kamara as my RB1. Feel pretty good about that. Yeah, and I think we just kind of went back and forth on some things. I know the tight end swap was kind of something. I wanted a better offense that I think is a little bit more sustainable with Stafford throwing as much as he is, than the
Hmm.
Cardinals kind of, getting off to a hot streak. I think that'll kind of regress to where we originally thought they would be. And then just getting Gabe Davis, where I'm at with my third wide receiver slot, currently being, Zay Flowers and Garrett Wilson. I kind of wanted a better offense, and Zay Flowers is kind of being used pretty close to the line of scrimmage. He's getting a ton of targets, but not a lot of downfield stuff. So wanted
Hmm.
something that was a little bit more spike week potential, and Davis kind of gives me that. So it kind of worked out for both sides, I think.
Yeah, I think it's an even trade. I
You
mean,
know,
like I said, he got a certainly obviously with the injuries to his running back core.
yep.
Brian Robinson is a good, I think filler for him.
Hmm.
Probably pretty steady, obviously to kind of rely on, and then Saquon hopefully he get maybe a week or two that he gets him back. So I think that kind of helped the bastards for sure.
Yep.
And then obviously he really didn't necessarily giving away Gabe Davis. I mean, Tank Dell, the guy is just producing in Houston.
Yeah, he is. That offense is fun, man.
Yeah, yeah, and
CJ
like
Stroud
I
looked
said,
really good.
he's got Pickett. I mean, he's got some depth there, so I think he was
Yep.
willing to do that just to kind of get another
Hmm.
running back there just to kind of fill in. So yeah, I think that was a
Yep.
pretty good trade for both.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Uh,
I think, yeah, I do think it works out like that. I mean, obviously, everyone kind of has their thoughts. Brian Robinson put up the close to 30
mhm,
on Denver in week 2. I think, kind of going and seeing what Denver did in week 3, giving up a 70 burger, and, one of the biggest offensive performances I've ever seen, especially running the ball. I think
mhm.
for me, I think Brian Robinson's performance in week 2 might be a little bit of an outlier in terms of what his potential ceiling is, just because of how bad Denver's running defense
Saw that
was.
this week. Yep.
So, yeah, exactly. So, I do think he's a steady, RB2 flex, RB3.
Mhm,
But, with where I'm at right now, I think I felt pretty good about making that, especially with, like I said, Kamara coming back.
mhm,
So, yeah, I mean, I have another tough matchup this week. I got Ryan.
mhm.
Ryan's team looks solid.
Yeah, let's go
I
to
mean,
Ryan's team. Let's
yep.
let's
So
recap
yeah,
him a little bit.
yep. So my matchup, I got Ryan. So he's got Lamar. St. Brown was his keeper.
Hmm.
Then Michael Pittman. I think he got Pittman in round 6, 7.
Yeah, I don't think
Got him.
anyone wanted to touch
Yeah,
him, but he looks steady.
yeah, and I think that was kind of a draft lesson for me, just kind of thinking about Pittman a little bit more and why he's doing so well. So
Mhm,
I think and why I drafted Alec Pierce, I think with Richardson coming in, it was kind of just like, oh, he's like a downfield gun, downfield huge arm. He's just going to chuck it
mhm,
deep and everything. And
mhm.
that's not really Pittman's game, but goes back to Michael Pittman's just an awesome freaking player. and
Yeah,
he's
he's a
just
stud.
going to be the first read every single play,
Hmm.
and that's why he's just dominating. So with Pittman, and then Ryan's got Bijan,
Yep.
probably the highest floor running back currently outside of Raheem Mostert, I think.
I don't think he's even touched his ceiling yet. So yeah, I agree
No,
with you.
no,
Yep.
yeah, my God. And if anything happened to Algier, if he missed time, I mean, my God, it's
Yep.
wheels up for Bijan.
Yep.
Um, Pierce is probably his weakest starting player.
Bounced back a
You
little
know,
bit last week.
yeah.
For someone, I have shares of him in another league, and
Hmm.
definitely a slow start. But I mean, Houston, they put up points last week in a pretty big
Yep.
upset against Jacksonville. So I mean, he could hopefully CJ Stroud on that offense gets it going a little bit on the outside, and Pierce doesn't get phased out on game script wise. But yeah, I do
Yep.
think looking at his lineup here, I mean, IU coming back, he was obviously steady for the first 2 weeks, sat week 3, obviously, and then Mark Andrews on the stack with Lamar was a
Yeah.
really nice play by him in the draft. So
Yeah, and
um,
Andrews will really get it going. I have Andrews in my work league, and he's he had the touchdown last week against Cincinnati, or in week 2, but he's probably gonna settle in around like probably like 8, 9, 10 touchdowns
mhm.
this year.
Yeah,
So
I think a really solid team out of Ryan so far, at least
yep,
on paper.
yep,
Obviously 2-1, so he's right in the thick of things.
mhm,
But yeah, I really, really like his team. Only
yep, me
downside that
too.
I can really knock him on is throwing out that fab, which obviously Josh Kelly just didn't pan out after week 1. I mean, which I don't think anyone would have predicted that he was gonna throw up a couple duds. I think he had what,
I yeah,
3
I,
and
I
2.
didn't. Yep,
He had 5
yeah,
points in the last 2 weeks.
yeah. His best week was with Eckler in week 1.
Yeah. Yep. So it
Um,
is what it is. He kept he
yep,
kept 40 of his dollars, so he's not fully out
hmm,
of fab, but doesn't look good in
yep,
hindsight. But any case, yep,
yeah.
he's looking good.
Thankfully for my matchup with Ryan, I do actually catch Ryan's team with some unfavorable matchups in terms
Hmm.
of the defenses they play. Lamar and Andrews are in Cleveland, probably, one of the 3 best defenses in the league right now.
Hmm.
Buffalo home against Miami. So that game, very likely both teams are going to score close to 30, you assume.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
there's always opportunities for, Buffalo to get some sacks. I think Miami's offensive line has been playing a little bit over their head with
Hmm.
the defenses they faced so far and the pass rushes, but Buffalo's got a really good D, so I think they'll probably settle in maybe around like
Yeah,
7, 8,
I
9 points.
I would say week 3 for him. I mean, the big highlights, obviously going back to his matchup,
Yep.
with Dre was, I mean, Buffalo's D putting up 35. I mean, that's
Crazy. Beat down.
anything. Yeah, anything in that department is
Yep.
you get that from a defense. You're without anyone really kind of having a dud week. You're
Yep.
looking pretty good with your defense
Yeah,
doing that. So yeah, absolutely. Yep.
exactly.
Um,
Yep. So we'll
going
see.
on.
And again, for both of us, I think it's a huge matchup. We definitely both need wins. I think getting to 0-4, at least for me,
Mhm.
I think it's going to be really tough because I don't know what more else my team necessarily can do. I don't see any like huge outliers in terms of who's not performing up to standard. And I can just be like, oh, it's not like Justin Jefferson's like starting
Sure.
slow and he's
Sure.
just not doing anything. He's been crushing. So
Yep.
we'll see. So,
Yep.
it's we'll go from there. But yeah,
So I'm gonna
I
move. I'm
mean,
gonna go down the list here. I'm gonna
yep.
just move to matchups in week 3 to kind of move on to some different teams. Obviously, you and I are by all
Mhm.
means a must win. So we
Yep.
know where we're standing. Bastards and Finkel, just probably the week 3 matchup of the week for sure. I mean, an absolute dogfight.
At least in
Came down
terms
to
of record. Yep.
record in week 3, and just the score. I mean, Finkel ends up edging out the Bastards 143 139.
Hmm.
Just a hell of a battle. Obviously highlighted there just based on the Chargers. I mean, obviously the Bastards have Herbert, threw up 36. Keenan Allen is just turning back the clock. Guy's really showing what
Crushing.
he when
Yep.
he's healthy, he really is a top 10 probably receiver in the league. Threw
Yeah,
up a 47 spot.
he's in that CeeDee Lamb role in that offense, and just
Hmm.
he's just getting funneled with targets. I mean, for God's sake, he had 18 catches. I think he had like 22 targets.
Hmm.
Like, my goodness.
And he threw a touchdown.
Yeah, yeah. Add that on. Yeah, there you go.
So I do going to let's run through the Bastards. I mean,
Yep.
they're playing Andre this week, but kind of touched on it. Obviously, Brian Robinson really fills a void there for the Saquon injury, and then obviously Nick Chubb uh, out for the season.
Yep.
solid. Herbert, obviously I would say top five, quarterback on a given week. That
Surpri-
offense is
yeah.
go ahead,
Surprising
Sean.
pick. I think, did Lowe take him in 3? I think he took him in
Three,
the third round. Very
third round.
surprising.
Yep. Yep.
But Herbert's been awesome. I don't know what he is. What is he on the year? He's the quarterback 4, or he's the four. No, he's the fourth
I
overall player. I think he might be the quarterback 3,
I
maybe.
think he's top three. Yeah, top five for sure.
Yeah.
And then you kind of moving down the list here. I mean, Mari
Yep.
Cooper's been solid for him. I think he's really, solidified as his top receiver for sure. Christian Kirk, he kind of slid back up a little bit. It's interesting to see what Jags team shows up on a week-to-week basis, but I do think he's a solid wide receiver too. We talked about Tank Dell earlier. Obviously, Evan Ingram on the trade or trade target, I should say, for you. But
Mhm.
solid, obviously solid. And then James Conner. I mean, probably not a sexy name by any means, but 12, 16, and 19 here in the first 3 weeks. I mean, a guy that's not giving you anything less than 12 in the first 3 weeks and that type of offense, you gotta appreciate a guy like that you can just put in and kind of know he's gonna get the touches, So
Yeah,
I
no
mean,
doubt.
solid team for
Ha-
sure. He's
Yep.
staying afloat. I mean, obviously he lost last week in a tight one, still put up points. I mean, he's at 2-1 and looking pretty solid, really, getting Saquon back soon. And he still has Pickens on the bench too, who knows? I mean, I really do like that kid a lot.
Yep.
And he's been kind of
Yeah.
the target monster a little bit in the last couple of weeks with Deontay being on the sideline. So
Yeah.
Nebraska, I think, has a pretty solid team.
Yeah, agree. So kind of looking at Loke's team quick, I think he's first in points currently.
Hmm.
He's first in points currently. Logue has, I think, made the playoffs in like 10 straight years. So it's kind of
Great
just like,
manager.
yeah, it's kind of just like on par with him. And I mean, you summed up his team kind of running down pretty well. Do you want to just touch quickly and go a little bit further on James Conner? Has there ever been like an RB1/2 that is more underappreciated than James Conner? I mean,
I think every year
he's
I tell myself I don't want to touch James Conner, and every year I'm like, this guy is just
yeah,
so steady. There's no one
he
behind him.
yeah. And last year, I think on Phil's team, the
Yeah.
last half of the season, he was like a locked in RB1. He was scoring like minimum 20 points, getting at least, 4 to 5 catches a week. He does everything. And I mean, the biggest thing for him a lot was health. And now, when he's healthy, he's a monster, even
Yep.
on a team that everyone thought was going to be awful. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
Logue took the chance on him. I know for me, I wanted no part of James Conner, but,
Same. And that was that was really his third back at that point with
yep,
Chubb and Saquon taken so early
yep.
in his draft, I should say. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
good on him. That really steadied obviously the ship a little bit with losing a guy like Chubb, first round pick. That's a tough pill to swallow this early in the season, but he looks like he should bounce back and looks pretty good. I'm going to shift over to his week 4 opponent,
Yep. Hell yeah.
Andres Plantation,
Yep.
another guy that has some steady success in this league. Never won one, but guy's always there at the end.
It's been close. Yeah.
Got a real solid team. He is, I will say, just kind of running down it. I mean, Jalen Hurts, obviously, we know what he's done in the last year for sure, obviously, and then kind of picked up on it. I mean, the guy's a machine from the 1 yard line. It's automatic.
It's
Um,
unstoppable play.
Tyreek Hill again, just unbelievable. I mean, the guy, he's unguardable. He might be the most unguardable guy in the NFL. This week he's going with Rashid Shaheed, maybe a little bit of a flyer this week, obviously not knowing the status of Carr. Kyron Williams, thank God he picked him. Obviously with the Cam Akers, shift there in that offense and that trade. He's gonna slot in Khan. Is that how we say him? Kane?
I think he said it's A-Chan now.
I know.
It
I read
was
that the other
A-Chain
day.
and now it's A-Chan.
Whatever you say, he had
Yeah,
52 points last week. Not
unbelievable.
sure he's going to duplicate that again, obviously against Buffalo, but um, he really is thin. I think that's really his weak spot, obviously with Jonathan Taylor, kind of in
Mhm.
limbo for that roster.
Yep.
Darren Waller's been relatively solid. I mean, I don't think that's a weakness by any means. He's kind of up and down a little bit, but and this week he's got to throw out Roshan Johnson, which he is starting to pick up a little steam with Chicago. That team is just just a terrible franchise. Let's just be real.
So bad. Yeah.
But they are playing Denver this week, so
Yep.
we've seen obviously what running backs do against them. So
Yep. Yep.
that'll be an interesting matchup. I mean, you're getting two guys that are towards the top of the league. Obviously, I think it's a 2 versus 4 matchup this week.
Mhm.
Projections are within 6 points. I mean, it's going to be an interesting one. I mean, we're going to run through some pick'ems later, I think, what we
Yep.
said. So we'll
Yep.
keep it moving, I guess, if you want, unless you have some insight into
Um,
Andy's team.
Yeah, I kind of just want to go on based on Andy's like build with his team. He's
Mhm.
carried by studs. So he's kind of
Absolutely.
like a studs and scrubs approach, and I think
Mhm.
that's kind of always been the way he's gone. Having Hurts, having Hill, two arguably obviously at their position. Kyron Williams has just been a monster to start. He
Yeah.
literally has played 100% of snaps in 2 straight games, which is unheard
Mhm.
of. And then Roshan, like you said, has the really good matchup. And then Philly's D right now, they get Washington at home.
It's true. Didn't even go to the D.
Washington just got steamrolled by Buffalo, and Buffalo scored 30 points. So I think they had like
Mhm.
8 sacks, 4 picks. So definitely a spot where Philly can get after. I fully expect Philly to have in the double digit points at least this week. So yeah, I mean Andy's got a good team, and if Jonathan Taylor ever figures it out and comes back, that solidifies his RB1 spot, RB1-2 outside of Kyron Williams, and then he'll look pretty solid kind of moving forward. So
Yeah, it gets maybe
yeah,
Deontay back at some point. Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
yep. So I think week 7 is probably the target for Deontay because he's on IR
100%.
and then he has a bye, I think, in week 6. So
Mhm.
yeah, week 7, and then he should be set for the stretch run. But yeah, like we said earlier, having Dolphins, I mean, my God, Tyreek Hill is he's just a monster every week. He can just win you weeks. So and
Mason Hall.
that's
Yep.
that's the name of the game. So
You're
yeah,
gonna move
so
down to
Andy,
next matchup, or
yeah. So Andy's opponent last week, he
oh yeah,
played
please do.
Ryan.
Yep. Yep.
I played Ryan. I played Ryan this week. So we can just go down to the next matchup that's underneath that. Nils and Rick.
Correct.
So
Go ahead. Kick it off. Which one you
um,
want?
yeah. So Rick obviously a heavy favorite. I lost to Rick
Hmm.
last week. Similar sort of approach, I think, at least to start with the stars and scrubs. He's kind of had some guys kind of come along slowly in terms
Hmm.
of what they're putting out, like Mixon. Obviously DeAndre Swift coming in and solidifying, I
That's
think, that
huge. Yep.
RB1 spot in Philly is just massive. Kittle
Hmm.
can go off on any week. I know he went off last week with 9
Yep.
targets, 7 catches for 90. Chris Godwin pretty steady so far.
Hmm.
Just kind of filling in that flex spot, giving him a pretty good floor. But having Diggs and I do think obviously having Mahomes he's going to put up close to 30 every week, and then Puka. I do think that Puka will kind of settle in as like a weekly wide receiver 2-3. I don't think he's going to get fifth double digit targets every week.
No, no.
Especially with
Praying
Cooper
that he
Cup coming
doesn't.
back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
praying that he
especially with
doesn't.
Cup coming
My
back.
thing. Yep.
But yeah, I mean, Rick's team
Solid,
has
solid
been
team.
pretty solid and pretty steady so far. There's a reason he's 2-1. I'm kind of looking at how many points he has so far. He has
341.
341. So kind of right in the middle of the pack.
Yep.
But yeah, just a good solid team that can go off at any point. Nils
Nils is, I
had
would say, trending down a little bit. He's got the
struggled. He's
second least
struggling.
amount of points.
Yep.
Cousins has been always a steady, kind of a steady fantasy quarterback that no one,
Yep.
again, not a sexy name, but
Yeah.
just
I think
produces.
drafted him in the
Yeah.
drafted him in the
Yeah,
last round.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. CD, I mean, obviously, the Dallas definitely had a kind of a dud game last week with their, them losing to Arizona, but, you obviously being a guy that traded for him last year and kind
Yep.
of helped, solidify your team, but still put up 10 last week. So he, again, a good name. Jalen Waddle, I think, was someone when he made that deal, I think, with I think it was Aaron, prior to them playing each other last week, which I always think is
Mm-hmm.
funny when managers trade.
It is
And
funny.
then they're still playing each other that week. But I thought it was a pretty even trade overall. I thought Stevenson would take a little bit of an uptick over Sanders. Stevenson really hasn't gotten off the ground a little bit. And then we did see Zeke, unfortunately, get some carries last week for them.
Yep.
So kind of not sure where that kind of settles, at least with that the distribution in that backfield. He's got Gainwell. I think he played him last week, and looks like he's going to play him this week, at least initially. Which I mean, it's kind of a dart. I mean, if you can throw it there and he gets a touchdown, not a great play, but I mean, Najee's just not really doing much in Pittsburgh.
It's hard. Najee's killing him. How do you start Najee? I mean, you can't. I mean, he looks slow. He looks. I mean, my God, I think this is like not really getting on Nils's team, but I think Najee's got to lose weight, man. Like you watch him run. Slow. I think he's up to like 240. Like you got to cut some weight, man.
Eddie Lacy territory.
Yeah, like he looks like Eddie Lacy.
Yeah, it's
not Jaylen
good.
Warren looks explosive, so that's kind of killing him right now.
Yeah. And then 2 good tight ends. I mean, Freiermuth and Henry, I think are both definitely sufficient. And I got to say, I mean, even being a Packer homer, I mean, Jayden Reed, he looks like a very viable player for the Packers. Again, this week's going to be interesting to see how they integrate. Obviously, Jonesy back, Watson might be back. So, but I do think that slot receiver with Reed, I think he's been pretty viable. I mean, I'm going to look here in the stats: 6 to start, 19 in week 2, and 9 last week. So, I mean, not any earth-shattering number last week, but I do think he's getting looks. So we'll see. And then he still has Drake London on the bench. McLaurin really hasn't gotten going. Yeah, so I mean, he's got some guys, obviously the points for, and then the big thing, I mean, he's got Dallas's D, which even with Diggs, I do think that they're, again, last week was a kind of an anomaly, I think. But they're going to get sacks, they're going to get turnovers. They're going
to get after Mac Jones this week.
And they're home, so I think it's going to be a bounce back week.
They were embarrassed last week in Arizona. They're going to get after Mac Jones this week.
I think so too. So, but I do think again he's, kind of at 1 and 2, not not in the cellar with us, but certainly close to hitting the panic button. I think a little bit with the points for, and the team kind of looking a little shaky, especially at RB. For the Beeve, but
agree.
We'll move on.
Yeah,
what's the next matchup here?
Yeah, I just wanted to close on. No, you're good. I just wanted to close on Nils real quick. Getting Waddle back is massive. That team put up 70 points without him, so I do think Waddle has been pretty slow to start, and for his putting up double digits both weeks before he had the concussion. But I do think that having, like we said in the beginning, having a piece of that Miami offense, I think is something that you want. I know for me, I was looking at potential trades for Waddle, if that would be something that that could manifest, because I think he is like a pretty good trade target. So from Nils' side, getting Waddle back, I think is massive. I think he can have that spike week potential that can kind of swing some weeks. But it's looking tough right now, especially when guys you invest in Najee and with Drake London too. Like, my God, that offense is so frustrating. Drake London's because London's such an awesome player.
He is, and he just traded for him. So again, he is going to hope that he kind of gets.
He had
back
him last year.
Yep. So we'll see. I think the biggest question mark is going to be Stevenson and hopefully getting some consistency out of his RBs for sure. I think his receivers and obviously Cousins will be solid, but we're gonna scroll
and
down.
And Nils' side has I think he's 4th in points against. So teams are putting up points against him. It's always funny how that kind of happens. Like some teams just go off on other teams. It's just kind of how it goes. So next matchup is your brother and Arby's. I think this is the highest. Is this the highest implied score on the week?
2 projection, both manager projections. Yep. So they're Finkel's got a slight edge, 115 to 111 just on projections. Obviously, we know what that really necessarily means, which is pretty much nothing. Touched a little bit on obviously him sneaking by Logan. So Logan, staring at it, maybe possibly 3-0, puts up 139, and Anthony just edges him out 143 with that. I think it was a late, maybe Goddard catch, I believe it was on Monday night. They played Monday night. Yep. So
when you put up Anthony, close to 139, 140, you expect to win. And especially for Anthony to have that, carried by Keenan and McCaffrey, similar kind of thing, just spike week guys. At Mike Evans has been a monster.
Yeah, outside
you
of
know.
his quarterback, which I mean, he's going to have to play the roulette. Unfortunately, I mean that's kind of how the
Yeah.
draft fell for him. But
Yep.
Daniel Jones and Dak Prescott, he just picked up this week or last week, I think, and played him. Not exactly the greatest options, but again, to your point, I mean,
Yeah.
he's got Keenan. DJ Moore still has been very solid on a pretty bad Chicago team.
Yep.
4 the first week, obviously, but then 16 and 13.
Yep.
But obviously with Keenan producing, and then Christian McCaffrey, easily the number one RB, I think. The guy, that offense, the way that they use him, it's just incredible. I mean, 25, 22,
Machine.
23 is
It's
as good
nuts.
as it gets for a first round pick and a top 3
Yep.
pick, or number
Yep.
1 pick, actually.
Yeah, first overall.
So, and then ETN, I think, has been solid. Obviously, I mean, obviously they had a tough loss with Houston, but I mean, he still put up 17 last week. Good number 2. Goddard, great. And then to your point, I mean, again, a guy that I think a lot of people faded with the Baker Mayfield pickup with Tampa Bay, but Mike Evans is just unbelievable.
He's a machine. That catch last week was insane.
I mean,
the catch over the middle,
yeah,
the one-hander, and he doesn't go down, and he gets
somehow
like 3 extra yards.
running.
Just a machine.
That was ridiculous.
It's unbelievable.
And this is again, not to beat a dead Jets horse, but the Brees Hall keeper, and then he can't even necessarily even play him at this point based on that offense. So,
nope.
Mike Evans stepping up for him is huge in terms of a flex play for him. So yeah, really, really, really solid team. He's had a couple guys on his bench too. I mean, Adam Thielen, just a 32 spot last week. I mean, didn't play obviously on the starting lineup, but he's
who are you going to start him over?
Exactly. And then Jacoby Myers, who surprisingly has been pretty good for the 2 weeks he's played. So yeah, it's a really solid, pretty deep team at receiver for sure. I really like Anthony's team and what he did with it. Quarterback's going to be, his Achilles. Is Daniel Jones going to be the guy that can run a little bit for him? And I don't think Dak's the guy by any means, but we'll see. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think your brother's got a solid team. Having the ability to have multiple guys that can win you weeks is huge. And I think we're seeing that's consistently what Keenan Allen is going to do. I mean, 31 and 47 the last 2 weeks, respectively. Christian McCaffrey is just going to be the engine of his team every time. And Travis Etienne is getting, I know he had 6.2 in week 2, but his carries 18 in week 1, 12 in week 2 in, that ugly game in Kansas City. And then 19, he's been, I know that, the offseason chatter was that Tank Bigsby was going to come in, and he has been getting goal line work,
but goal line
Travis Etienne is still the locked in workhorse on that team. And I think as the season goes along, I think Etienne is going to start scoring a little bit more. And then Evan, and honestly, having those players on the bench with Myers and Thielen, even with the uncertainty maybe at quarterback, if that's the right word, I think there are some trade options that, he might be able to make a move maybe for a quarterback, a little down
Scary
the road.
thing is,
yeah.
I think like right around that, just obviously sitting next to him and you always hear some, pre-draft pick thoughts. He was essentially a pick or 2 away from getting Tua, which would have been pretty scary if we were looking at this team now with a quarterback like that.
Aaron took him right before him, didn't he?
Yep, and then he kind of waited a couple picks I think later to take a quarterback. But just hindsight's always 20/20 in drafts. Sure. But it's a solid team. And then I guess we'll move over to Arby's. I mean, again,
let's go to Ben.
He's having 1 and 2. I mean, 347 points.
Does that surprise you? That Ben's 1 and 2. I was just looking at his team in the matchup. Does that surprise you that he's 1 and 2?
A little bit. I mean, again, like looking at his team, I mean, we're kind of scrolling through here. Obviously, he kept Josh Allen, who, obviously he struggled in week 1. I mean, everyone kind of made notes of that. Kind of bounced back, obviously, against Vegas, and kind of just had a regular game against Washington. Really wasn't needed, towards the second half, essentially, of that game. I mean, it was.
I don't even know I don't know when they pulled him. I'm
not sure either. I wasn't really keeping tabs. That score was so out of hand. It was, but, and then obviously the defense putting up 35. We know that, he wasn't necessarily needed for a couple of those, ending, we'll call it second half. But I'm a little surprised. I mean, I think, the biggest, if we're going to do some dud of the week, so to speak, was certainly Derrick Henry for him last week. I mean, 2 points is,
kills you.
is not a Derrick Henry performance. I mean, he had 11 rushes for 20 yards.
No
Obviously,
catches.
we know he's not a guy that catches a lot, but 0 catches. Yeah, that's a tough tough pill to swallow when your number one RB is doing that for you. AJ Brown
Yep.
finally came back, a little bit to life. I think last week on Monday night they, maybe yelling at Hurts got him the ball fed a little bit more, but
Oh, he's definitely the squeaky wheel treatment
yeah,
for sure.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, feed him and make him happy. Yeah.
Yep.
Debo's been real solid for him. I think that's been the not a surprise, but Debo was definitely, I think, one of the 2022 players that was sort of a letdown, a little bit just based on his value and what we know he can do, and he's certainly looked like he's certainly a bounce back candidate, I would say, for fantasy purposes for them. I mean, 11, 22, 25, and his second touchdown, I should say, first receiving last week. So yeah, he's looking solid. Zach Moss, obviously, I think I don't know if he drafted. I wouldn't want to say that was probably a waiver pickup.
No, I think he picked him up.
Yep, yep. And he looks the part. Who knows what happens with Taylor? But he has been a nice fill-in. Biggest maybe breakout candidate, and I was giving him some shit. I did like him. Sam Laporta is a
Let's
player.
talk about it. He's a player.
I mean, just slides into the Hawkinson role. I mean, it is. The guy looks the part. I hope he has a dud game against the Pack. Obviously, being a Pack fan tomorrow night, but he is. He's looking. I mean, 11 targets, 8 for 84 and a touchdown last week against Atlanta. Hasn't had anything less than 9 really, and then I would say, really kind of started off the year really getting integrated in that offense pretty quickly.
Yeah.
He's got 22 targets. I mean, just looking like a top 10 play in the tight end,
easily. I was gonna say, are we there yet by saying he's a weekly top 5 play?
He's getting there. He's getting there. I mean, look what Hawkinson did before he got traded. I mean,
yep. Yeah.
Goff loves his tight ends. And he's definitely getting
offense.
fed. Yeah, no, it is. It really is. And Nico Collins is a really, really solid play.
Yep.
Again, I think Houston's really starting to figure out their offense as a whole. A little down last week, obviously, in terms of his performance, but 14 and 27 in weeks 1 and 2, 23 targets. Yeah, he's looking like a pretty solid flex option. So yeah, interesting team. I do think, obviously, again, he's thinking Arby's, but Arby's might be, something that he's going to have to figure out, or hope that at least Derrick Henry gets back to being the guy he has. He has a couple flyers on his bench. Jaylen Warren, obviously he could break out at any point. We talked about that a little bit earlier with Najee. And Rachaad White, I need to take a look at. I haven't really followed him much, but I don't really think he's been solid.
He's
week
an
2.
RB3. Yeah, the week against Chicago, who's the second best matchup against running backs. But I think Rachaad White's a pretty solid, steady floor RB3.
And 2 really solid defenses just to kind of round out his team. I mean, Pittsburgh, Cleveland. We talked about Cleveland. Pittsburgh.
Are they the top 2 defenses?
I gotta feel like Dallas has got to still be up there.
You're right.
But I mean, they got to be top 5, I would say, for sure. So easily 2 defenses. If he holds on to that, he can just stream weekly. We know that carousel game with most guys, they're streaming defenses weekly. That's going to be a hell of a matchup, I think, this week.
I agree.
Finkel and Arby's. I mean, it's a 6 and 9 matchup in terms of where they're standing in the standings. But I mean, obviously, we pointed out most projected points in that matchup, 115, 111. We'll get to the pick'ems obviously a little later with that, but it's looking solid. I mean, Arby's. Any insight?
Not really. I think Ben's got an overall solid team. I do like the AJ Brown Debo combo at the top with Josh Allen. That's just a really good start. Derrick Henry has been outsnapped by Tajay Spears in all of the first 3 games. So if there's, I think if there's any player in the NFL that I'm concerned about hitting a cliff, I think it's Derrick Henry. One, not only because they have a legit backup behind him, but 2, I think Tennessee could blow it up in another couple weeks. And I think Ryan Tannehill might be on the move at the trade deadline if the Jets are struggling to find a quarterback. And I think that's something that they could actually do. But overall, Zach Moss looks like an awesome RB2 for right now. He's getting a ton of the work. Sam Laporta, where I stand on him. And then Nico Collins. Absolutely. I mean, Houston's going to be throwing the ball a ton. They're not getting anything from the rushing game. Do you know CJ Stroud has the 3rd most passing yards in his first 3 games as a rookie in the NFL history? Only behind Cam and Justin Herbert.
It's
So
funny. You don't see those stats necessarily, but obviously after week two, they showed the yard stats for passing
yep,
yards, and he had a huge obviously week two. This is prior to obviously last week's production, but I
yeah,
mean 400 yards nearly in week two for CJ Stroud. So
nuts.
clearly they're going to let him throw.
Yeah,
Again, we talked about Damian Pierce a little bit earlier, obviously for Ryan's team for Tiburon, but that I do think that offense is starting to figure itself out. Obviously, they got two good receivers.
yep,
Damian Pierce, we'll see. But yeah, I do think I do like both Tank Dell and Nico Collins in terms of flex options, we'll say, and fantasy purposes for sure.
yep,
And then I guess I
yeah.
mean, we talked about Tiburon. I'm sorry
We
to
did.
cut you off there, but
No, you're good. We did talk about my matchup. We did also touch on yours. Did you have anything else on your matchup with the Bandits coming up?
not really. I mean, it's looking ugly in the projections. I'll say that. I mean, 120
Yeah, it
to
always
100.
sucks when it looks ugly too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering if I just didn't have a player in the lineup or something when you see that 100-yard point total projection. But
Absolutely.
we'll go to Aaron obviously because we talked
Yeah.
about my team a little bit. And I'll touch on him, I guess, a little bit after this. But again, Tua, God willing, guy stays healthy. I do really like him. I root for him.
Yeah, fingers crossed, man.
Love watching that
It's
offense,
awesome.
obviously.
So fun.
So he really hit there. I liked Tua last year, but again, I think he's looking the part for sure already early this year. Jamar Chase, to your point, started slow. Hopefully that Bengals offense gets going a little bit. They looked a little bit better in the second half on Monday night. And obviously Chase was just a monster. I mean, he absolutely went off on Monday night.
Yeah. It's
15,
concerning.
15 targets.
I still don't think Burrow looks right. I think he just looks. I think he's really injured.
Yeah, it
But
sucks. Yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah, he's
calf
not.
injury.
I don't think. I don't think they're gonna sit him though. I think he's just gonna keep playing and play through it.
Not until they're really out of it. And this past Monday was a big win. I agree with you. I
Huge
think they're
win.
gonna just hopefully try to sort of limp into their bye week, which is week 7.
Yep.
They play at Tennessee this week, so could be a candidate for a bounce back game for a lot of their players.
Yep.
Obviously, Chase had a good week, but Higgins specifically for me,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
Joe Burrow, who hasn't really looked like Joe Burrow, was really excited to draft him in the 4th. Obviously, kind of not my normal draft strategy in terms of getting a quarterback early, but at that spot, I'm like, you know what? Let me take a shot with him if he is healthy, which all signs pointed that he was resting at least prior to the start of the season, and then unfortunately re-aggravated it. So we'll
Yeah.
see. But they have at Tennessee, at Arizona, and then home against Seattle before their bye week.
Like
So I
that.
do think they could
Like
get
that.
something rolling a little bit, and hopefully there's
Yep.
nothing in terms of re-injuring it or any setbacks for Joe Burrow. But yeah, Jamar Chase looks awesome, obviously on Monday night. Chris Olave, which I thought was just really the highlight of his trade with Nils. Obviously, we know both speak so highly, I should say, of Chris Olave, target monster. Between him and
Stud,
Michael
dude. He has
Thomas,
like a one-handed catch every single week. It's insane.
so good. Yeah, I just kept shaking my head watching him against the pack. Obviously as a guy that I could have kept, but chose not to. We'll get to that obviously with my lineup, but I thought that was a great trade for him in terms of just upgrading from Drake London to Chris Olave.
Yep.
Tony Pollard is still, Dallas is still so steady, still a run forward team in terms of how their offensive approaches, especially with McCarthy calling plays there and really trying to take the pressure off a little bit of Dak. So love that. Sanders, I thought, we'll see. Verdict's still out with how Carolina's offense is going to be with that. Not a lot of weapons there. I mean, Adam, like again, we talked about Thielen earlier, but I thought Sanders. We'll see. That could just be a solid RB2.
Getting a ton of work
Hawkinson,
in the passing game so far. 6 targets, 5 targets,
yes.
9 targets last week. So
Yeah.
they all offseason they preached that they were going to give him targets and they were going to
Mm-hmm.
throw him the ball, kind of get him close to the 50 catches, I should say, that he had his rookie year. And I think that's looking pretty likely.
Yep.
But go ahead.
TJ Hawkinson. We obviously touched on him a little bit based on the role that he had with Detroit. Obviously, when he came over to Minnesota towards the back half of last year, he was just pretty much unstoppable in that Minnesota offense. I really think he's, again, another, I would say a top 5 tight end play for sure.
Yeah.
And And then Calvin Ridley, I mean, obviously, I love the guy. He's had 2 down weeks, unfortunately, since that initial just welcome back week 1 against Indy. I mean, he really looked like he was going to be, a
A
steal.
league winner.
Yep. So he has kind of came back down to earth. We'll see what happens. I mean, again, they've had a couple of dud weeks, Jacksonville. Obviously KC only putting up 9 points and losing at home again to Houston this week, this past week, I should say, by 20. Interesting. It was just that's an interesting. We got to see what kind of Trevor Lawrence gets going in the passing game there, I think. So that's the starting lineup. I mean, give your take obviously on it. I mean, defenses are kind of whatever, Kansas City and Washington, but starting lineup looks really solid.
Yeah, I actually had the thought that I think if we do get into power rankings this week, I'm not sure if we'll have time. But if we do get into power rankings this week, I think Aaron would be in my top 3. I think Aaron's roster is awesome. I think his starting lineup is really solid, and having Kansas City as the defense, it seems every year that Kansas City is just always just randomly on waivers. And then someone picks them up and they are just a top 10 defense the rest of the year. Having Kansas City against Zach Wilson is going to be a disaster for the Jets. So
I don't like that.
I mean, and Kansas City blitzes a ton, and Zach Wilson is atrocious against the blitz. But having Tua, he's arguably the best offense in the league. Chase is just going to get his. Olave is, we know what he does. Interesting to see what happens with Olave and Jameis. With Carr out, I know he has the sprained AC joint. Not sure how long he'll be out. Pollard is a locked in RB, top 3 RB every week. Sanders, like I said, I think is a really solid RB2. Hawkinson, top 3 tight end weekly, and then Ridley as his wide receiver 3, I think is probably one of the best in the league. So I mean, I think it's interesting. Your matchup, you need Burrow to go off, and you need Higgins to score. And
it's a big week. Again, we talked about the 0-3. We just ran through Aaron's team. Great. I think, they obviously have the highest total point projection with at 120 this week. But again, Joe Burrow and T. Higgins going against Tennessee. Both of them been a little bit off. I got a good T. Higgins week 2, but definitely need Cincinnati and to score points essentially. Still working it out, but I mean, based on my week 2 and week 3 waivers of Zay Jones and Josh Reynolds, who put up 0 and 0, I'm going to go with the homer play of Romeo Doubs this week, most likely in my wide receiver 2. Just hoping that he gets some looks. He looks like the red zone guy. James Cook has been super solid. Really like that pick. Like James Cook coming into the season, and he really looks like he looks the part, we'll say. Damian Harris stealing a couple goal line touchdowns, but I'll take the yards, and he's bound to score at some point.
He'll come. Yeah.
Hopefully, like I said, Jonesy coming back this week. Hopefully, amazing week 1. He was the reason they won week 1. Guys, I mean, he's a lightning in a bottle. I mean, he can really break free and score pretty much at will. But he looks really, really good, at least in week 1. Hopefully that hammy is healed up after sitting for a couple games, but that's going to be huge for me, especially with another week without Cooper Kupp. Tight ends has been the hole for me for the last couple seasons. Running with Komet, ran with him last year, was solid. You get the 8 points, nothing crazy there. Tight end roulette again with most teams here. And then Josh Jacobs has just been a huge letdown for me in terms of the keeper. Could have kept Tyreek in 2. Really kicking myself there. Or Olave in 8. And, Josh Jacobs reporting that day might have had some influence as to my excitement to keep him. But 9, 9, and 11, nothing terrible. But you're hoping he's a home run hitter. And, that Vegas run offensive line and run game has just not looked the same. Passing game looks great. I mean, Devontae Adams is going off. But, he's just he hasn't taken off yet. Hopefully slow start. We'll see. Still a lot of time. And then, defense, New Orleans, solid. So it's gonna take a couple big games for me to take Aaron down this week, just based on projections and what his team looks like. So, won't spend too much time on my team. We know it's a must win. Just talk to the guy in the locker room.
Yep. I think for Jacobs, last year he started off pretty slow as
Hmm.
well. And I think a factor could be that he missed all of training camp. So maybe he's still
100%.
getting his legs under him. They also have had some pretty brutal matchups in terms
Yep.
of kind of just like game script. I know first week, no training camp, kind of just getting his legs under him. Then they're
Expected.
in Buffalo.
Yep.
Yeah, then they're in Buffalo. They get beat down there, and then home against Pittsburgh. Arguably one of the best defenses in the league. So I think brighter days are ahead with Jacobs. But yeah, it's a tough matchup for you to
For sure.
try to get the off the winless streak here.
You're
So
right about that.
yeah.
Been kind of
Um,
circling week 5 as Cooper Cup's return. So
yep. Yeah.
would love to get at least a win before that. But again, it's going to
Yeah.
take a lot. So we'll see. We'll see. And
Yeah.
then let's
We the name of our show here is 20 minutes tops, and I think
well,
we're pushing an hour.
well,
So
it is our first. I will say.
of course, yep, yeah, we'll hone it in.
We could tweak the name this week just because it is
Yeah,
our first week kind of
yeah,
going through every
yeah,
roster. We
yeah,
probably won't do
yep,
this every
yeah,
week.
yeah, for
We'll
sure.
probably run
Yep,
down mostly through, weekly
matchups and
matchups and stuff
power
like that.
rankings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. But let's
Um.
run through the last one real quick, and then I
Yeah.
think we
Last
do have
match.
time for
Yeah.
rankings, maybe.
Last matchup is Steve against Phil. So Steve currently in first.
Hmm.
Had the big fab bid for Jordan Love. Can
Hmm.
admit that I didn't see that coming.
Not that much.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it seems like, I mean, he still has Fields on his team. I would doubt that he would drop him,
Mhm.
and like or make a move if he shelling out that much for Jordan Love. I think Jordan Love is going to be his main starter moving forward
Yeah. I mean,
until Fields can kind of figure it out.
I agree, and I think him having maybe not necessarily needing to start Christian Watson, but that is kind of like a mini stack, if you want to call it that, if Watson comes back and is
Yeah,
producing some
didn't think of that.
touchdowns
Yep,
for him.
yep,
And Fields is really, honestly, based on his lineup here, just looking at it, really was kind of the hole that he really needed to fill was the quarterback spot. I mean, Fields and that Chicago team just really haven't gotten off the ground. Even him, just in rushing, you would think, okay, if he's not throwing it, he's at least producing some yards on the ground. But they've kind of been a train wreck, and
yeah,
that was, $50. I think I'm not even sure. I didn't look honestly to see what the second highest bid. I know I threw $8 just to be a homer and try to get another Packer on my team, but
yeah,
50 was definitely a lot. But again, you always go based on needs, and I think that was a fine play by him, and I think that hopefully solidifies. So Jordan Love does look the part at least early
he
on
does
this
look
year to
good.
be
Yeah, Love looks
viable.
good so far. Yeah, he
Yep.
does.
But yeah, we'll run down his list. I mean, Devontae
Yep, go
Smith,
for it.
solid. I mean, really, really solid player. Kind of took the backseat again to AJ Brown, but again, we kind of talked about that. I definitely think they wanted to get him a little bit more involved this week. But
Yeah.
Devontae Smith, great pick. I think he's gonna, certainly be real steady. 17, 23, and 6. So I think he's definitely a home run guy. Lockett,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the guy's
Spike League
ageless.
player.
Yeah.
Few
Again,
mini
you never know
weeks.
with them. 100%. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So I think that's solid play. Mostert, which we talked about a little bit at the start of the pod, basically won him the week against me. I mean, both of us didn't do much. 100
Yeah.
to I think 80 or something like that was the score. I think Mostert had 40, so he had basically half of his points, which was ridiculous.
I think Mostert's the RB1 on the year actually right now.
Yeah, I mean, Mostert's looking great. Obviously,
Kicking
those
my low
injury
key
worry with
kick.
him.
Yeah. Yeah, until and actually Mostert was actually awesome last year too until he
Hmm.
got injured.
Yep.
Kicking myself, transparency. I did have an offer on the table that was a deal that me and Steve were working out. It involved Mostert and Jerome Ford and some other players.
Wow.
Yeah, and I didn't it kind of fell through. And then that was, I think, a day before Mostert went off and for 45. So kicking myself there. But
Love the
yeah, I
inside
think
information here that you're
yeah.
providing. This is great.
Yeah. Mostert and Eckler is just super solid.
Yeah, and if we didn't see anything with the whole Josh Kelly kind of falling on his face the last 2 weeks, it's that Eckler
Yep.
really is missed in that offense. I
Yep.
think he really is the
Yep.
guy, and We'll see. I mean, I don't know necessarily if he'll be essentially back this week, but time will tell. Obviously, he's gonna spend 2 weeks on the sideline, so he should be close to coming back at some point here.
Yep.
Tight end has been kind of interesting with him. I mean, I know Ferguson was on my team. He drafted Ferguson. I had him. I dropped him. That's kind of again going back to the tight end roulette. If you don't have really five to eight tight ends, I would say maybe 10.
Yeah.
You're really just kind of plug and playing and
throwing
hoping for like 8 points.
Hoping for a touchdown.
And a touchdown. Yeah. But Ferguson's definitely getting looks, so we'll see. And guy that I really, not to say he's not necessarily putting up points. Obviously, he got 17 rushes last week. Jahmyr Gibbs, I mean, guy that I really had circled, that I really wanted in this draft, just with the hype around him in preseason. Not really sure how they're going to necessarily divide that up. I mean, 17 rushes for 80 yards, 2 targets, which I was a little, puzzled by. I mean, they did win 20-6, so I guess necessarily not needing to throw as much with Goff having kind of a subdued game, but I think he could definitely be a guy if he gets going. He's got 3 really, really solid running backs.
Yeah.
So there's, I think, a reason why he's sitting at 3-0. And then Jordan Addison, just looking at his bench, I think he's great. Christian Watson hasn't been played yet.
Huge X factor though.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
With that field thing, and then he did sneakily pick up Stroud and has him on his bench as well. Just looking at it down here.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I didn't even see that.
Yeah. Yep. Just kind of, I didn't either until I clicked on his name. And then Niners D. I mean, nothing really to say there. Another top 5, top 3 defense. Not sure what their ranking is on the year, but I know they've been putting up some serious, steady points, we'll say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Riggs is 3-0. He seems to be the last couple of years a team to look out for.
Yep.
And nothing to sneeze at 3-0. I mean, that's a heck of a start, whether you sneak one by or not. His points for right now are 346. He's middle of the pack. 263 though is the lowest points against.
Yeah. I will say, Steve. I want to ask you: would you consider Jahmyr Gibbs a disappointment to this point?
I think so, with the hype around him. I don't think necessarily point wise, but I thought you saw that one run, I think week 1, where it just you saw that quick little burst he had, and you're like, holy shit, this guy is going to be something, and it just hasn't really, I guess, transitioned. I really hope it doesn't obviously transition this week as just a Packer fan watching the game tomorrow night.
Yep.
But I do think that he's a slight disappointment, especially last week with Montgomery going down and him kind of getting that full playbook essentially. I do think I expected a little bit more of a pop from him, but they were kind of comfortably ahead. So more to come with him. But again, we talked about Sam Laporta, who's breaking out for him. Obviously we know what St. Brown can do for him. So they do have, quite a bit of mouth to feed, I should say, on that offense. And Montgomery's going to come back at some point and be a complementary piece. So we'll see if he gets off the ground and really becomes a breakout player that we kind of all expected it to be. But they're a fun team and I definitely think a division favorite in the NFC North for sure. So we'll see what that offense really does. I mean, anything more on Riggs?
I think I think Steve, I know I ragged on Steve last year. I think he had the least points against last year by far. And it's kind of just happens in fantasy how it kind of goes. Some teams don't put up a lot of points, but not taking away from his team, I do think he has a really solid team. I would also consider Gibbs a disappointment to start to this point. Now I will say I do all offseason. One of the main reasons why I wanted Montgomery was because I firmly believe that he was their locked in RB1. I think Gibbs was going to be sort of a complementary piece. I didn't expect he would only get 2 targets in 2 or 3 games. But I do think kind of as things get rolling, they have a bye week 9. I think kind of as we get into like week 7, week 8 out of their bye, I think Gibbs is gonna. They need weapons, and 100%. Once Jameson Williams comes back, who knows what he's going to be? But I think Gibbs will be solid. But to this point, I think it may have been a little. Everyone may have been a little out over their skis on Gibbs a little bit up until this point, at least.
Yeah, I think he went round 3 in our draft. So a little,
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think that was kind of where everyone projected him to go, but
Yeah,
at this
that's where
point,
his
it seems a
ADP
little bit
was.
of
Yep.
a little higher than and maybe necessarily he's been performing at least through
Sure.
3 weeks. So,
Yeah,
uh,
and his floor I think is pretty steady. He's
I
never
agree.
going to kill you, and he always has potential. I thought he may have gotten a little bit more spike weeks than he has, but I do think
Mhm.
that's ultimately coming. But moving over to Phil,
Highest point total of the week,
yeah, he has.
155.
My uh Phil's team is always to me, I don't know what it is every year. It's always just the most random collection of players. And
It is,
it
and he gets it done
and
somehow.
made the playoffs last year. Kind of coming in, 1 and 2. I'm not sure. Let me look at his points that he has.
354. I mean, right,
Yeah, I mean,
right there.
buoyed by the massive week last week, definitely
Yeah,
helps.
yeah,
But I will say ultimately has a pretty solid team. Stafford, I do think touchdown regression is coming. I think he only has one this year.
yeah. I don't think he's. I mean, I don't
And
even know if he's had it on one.
he's throwing the ball a ton.
Two.
He has two this
Yep,
year so far. So
yep.
yep, so 2 and 4 picks. So pretty good matchups upcoming, Indy and Philly.
hmm
But
hmm
we'll kind of see. Devontae is just timeless. My God, dude,
Unbelievable.
just gets it done. Yeah. Wide receivers, I will say, I do think Phil, outside of Adams, may have the weakest receiving core in the league in terms of what he's got. Though I do think Michael Thomas has been a surprise. He's been pretty
Steady.
steady,
Getting
really
eight, nine
steady.
targets
And
every
then,
week. Yeah,
yep. And I think Tutu Atwell has been, he's been
another
getting
dime.
targets. He's been getting targets. He's been getting
Scored last week. Yep.
yep. So he's a pretty good flex play. And then Cortland Sutton, oh my God, he had 2 fumbles last week, but he's
Yeah,
getting
he's been
targets
solid
with
too.
Judy
Yep.
out. He's getting targets. And then
Even with Judy, I
Kelsey,
mean, Judy played
obviously.
last week. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Kelsey, obviously. And then Kenneth Walker with the massive week
Kenneth
last week.
Walker, man.
And he's been awesome. So
They were really trying to write Kenneth Walker off. I mean, with the Charbonnet,
yeah.
you know,
I I
play,
thought
and
that
I
was
thought maybe they were going to run two running backs just based on being in Seattle. But I mean, Kenneth
sure.
Walker, another monster game obviously last week for him. I mean, 30 points. But yeah, he looks like he's really solidified, his status at least in that offense. And for
Yeah.
Phil, I mean, Madison, we kind of knew that he wasn't going to be Dalvin, right? I mean, we kind of saw when he stepped in there. I mean, he did
Yeah.
look okay in that role, behind him for a year or two or wherever it was.
Hmm.
But yeah, he hasn't really necessarily done a lot, but he's been steady. So he really did need someone to step up, and Kenneth Walker definitely is doing that for him. To your
Yeah.
point, Tutu Atwell, I don't know what that offense is going to do. Next week we'll say if Cup does come back. Is it
Yeah.
Puka? Is it Atwell? Do all three of those guys still get to eat? From Stafford, still throwing it pretty well. So
Right.
it'll be interesting to see there. But obviously, like you said, Sutton's been really, really solid for him. Bench isn't really anything special. Obviously, he has Palmer now, so we're going to see what where that guy kind of fills in with that Mike Williams injury.
Hmm.
So we'll see there. But outside of that, nothing really special on the bench side of things. But yeah, he's getting
Yeah.
it done. I mean, he's averaging
Yeah.
118 a week. Obviously, a big week last week. So yeah,
Yep.
that'll be an interesting matchup this week for sure. I guess if you want to run, we can quickly do maybe a pick 'em,
Sure.
and then just do
Yeah.
the rankings, and then we'll wrap. So
Yeah. Cool.
um,
So my matchup with
God,
Ryan, I want to,
non-bias.
yeah, non-bias. Non-bias though, I do think I sneak out a win this week.
All right, all right.
Just because I think Ryan's team is better than mine, though I do think his matchups are tougher. I think
Mhm.
Lamar in Cleveland, it's gonna be a gutted out game. Not sure if Andrew scores. If he does, if he doesn't, he's probably gonna get maybe somewhere in the 7 to 10 range.
Mhm.
Um, Jefferson in Carolina. I mean, he's just. I think DK is due for a big game also.
He's been solid. Yep.
Kamara coming back. I think he gets a majority of work right away, and
Mhm.
I think they're going to limit Jameis to throw, and I think Kamara is going to get a lot of work. Ford has been awesome in his relief of Chubb, at least against Pittsburgh last week. He didn't do anything on the ground, but he was in Tennessee, hardest matchup. Gets the receiving touchdown. And then I think Gabe Davis, I just think he's a really good chance for a touchdown in that high scoring environment. So
Back-to-back week
I'm
scoring. I like
yeah,
that too. Yep.
it's going to be tight. I think Ryan's got a really good team, but I do think variance, and I think I've been close to wins outside of this last week.
Mhm.
So I think I get off the schneid this week.
I agree. I kind of jotted this down prior to us coming on here to do the podcast, just in terms of like a pick 'em. I did have you with the win with Tipper on this week. Again, just looking at matchups, I don't necessarily take too much stock into projections, but I liked your matchups this week, like you said and you mentioned, and his being a little bit harder matchups, just based on where he's at with, to your point, like you said earlier, Cleveland and stuff like that with Andrews and Jackson. Um, Ayuk, we're not really sure necessarily how healthy he's going to be, but going back
Yeah.
to your side of things, I think there's definitely going to be some more points scored in a couple of those games featuring your players. So I did have you this week in that matchup. Going to my matchup, since we're on the topic.
Yep. Yeah.
Huge uphill battle. So we just talked about it. So again, non-biased. I have Aaron just based on the matchups and the lineups. Thursday night's going to be a huge start for me.
Yeah.
With Dobbs going this week, potentially Dobbs going this week. We'll see. Still a little bit of room to make some moves, obviously, before the week starts, or change that lineup. But doubling down, obviously, hopefully Jones plays. Might have two Packers going tomorrow night. That's really going to start the week. You don't win or lose on Thursday, but having two guys go is, we need some points to start the week
Yeah.
for sure. And then he's got Chase, so it's going to take away. I should get all the points, at least collectively if they do score. Obviously having Joe Burrow, so we're going to need a pretty big Bengals game, or at least focused in on that Bengals game for sure. But again, I do think he's definitely got the edge for this week. So it would be slightly an upset. And then we'll kind of see where we're at. I mean, I hate to say that because that would mean Green Bull's 0-4.
At 0-4. Yeah.
But
yeah,
we'll see what happens.
not a fun place to be. I also think Aaron gets the win. I do think though, I do have Buffalo beating Miami in Buffalo. I think this could be just the way kind of things go in the NFL. I think this might be a come down to earth game for Miami. I think their deficiencies on their offensive line are going to show up. And I think Tua might have his lowest output of the year. Now, that could be the kiss of death for your team if Tua, ends up coming out and flaming the Bills. But I do think, with his team, I'm not looking at it. I think he can win in a lot of different ways. And I think a lot of different guys can score. So, tough draw for you in week 4. So,
essentially a must win. So, but we'll see. We'll see. But I agree with you there. So we covered our 2. Let's go from the top down. I guess we're the Bastards and Andre. Like I said, 2 versus 4 there. 2 guys that are really, really steady. I'll kick it off. I mean, I had the Bastards this week. Just based on the matchups. I think Andre is definitely still, kind of treading water. He's at 2-1, thank God, but he really needs to figure out that Taylor situation at running back. Rashid Shaheed is an interesting flyer this week, as is a wide receiver 2, especially with Jameis, Winston probably going to be the starting quarterback. And then on the other side of things, I like some of the matchups. I mean, Herbert against Las Vegas, I feel like he's going to throw up another 30 spot easily there. Again, we kind of talked about his running backs, Connor and Robinson being relatively solid. Now Robinson does get the Eagles, so a little bit tougher of a matchup for him. But I give the slight edge to the Bastards this week in the pick'em. But I think it's going to be a pretty close affair, even based on the projections as well. Kind of seeing where the matchups are and at least their initial starting lineup. I give the slight edge to the Lord Winchester there.
Yeah, I think I will too. I do think it's going to be tight, but with Andy's team, it's a pretty high wire act right now. He's really putting all of his chips in Jalen, which I do think Jalen could get 35-40 against Washington, though. Washington has been pretty okay against quarterbacks, I think. Maybe I'm misremembering that, but I think if Jalen gets, around 25, I think, I mean, Tyreek is his floor is so insanely high, but I do
Mhm.
think once again, this could be a game where maybe Waddle gets his and Tyreek kind of takes a little bit of a backseat if he's getting all the attention.
Mhm.
Kyron, tough matchup. I think
Mhm.
Indy's been really solid against every team so far.
Yeah, they
But
have been
Kyron, I mean, he's getting so much work. And then A-Chain just rolling off that huge performance.
massive.
Rosha, it's just kind of I couldn't confidently pick Andy's team because I mean he would need to be buoyed by a massive week from Tyreek and Jalen, I think, to go
Feel the same way.
off. Yeah.
Yep. Feel the way.
And I
So
think
we've been.
yeah, I think Logan just puts up. I do think it is going to be a little bit lower scoring though. I do
I
think the
agree. I
projection
agree.
kind of hovering around maybe like 100, 105,
Where
110
they're at right now. Yep.
at the max. I think is kind of going to be where things settle in. But I think Herbert can put up like 40 and
I agree.
um yeah. So all right, cool.
Where
So
we're in
then
agreement for the
going
first three.
to yep,
Ship
so
Lizard and
going
Bees.
yep. I
Go
need to
ahead.
take a look.
I'll let you. All right. I'll.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I think Rick gets the dub here. I just have I mean, I know the projection kind of says it that way, but
Sure.
I hate Stevenson in Dallas. It's
Hmm.
a revenge game for Zeke, so I think if anyone scores, I think Zeke is going to be the one to get the goal line work. I'm
Hmm.
not sure how similar to how New England was with the Jets last week. I don't really know how they move the ball. Um,
Hmm.
and I think Lamb is due for a bounce back. I think Cousins can just flame Carolina. And I
Hmm.
think I think this is going to be Waddle's I think Waddle scores a long touchdown in this game. But with that said, I do though again, Nils can be buoyed with Dallas's defense. I think they can put up maybe 15. But again, Mahomes at the Jets,
Yep. I was just
digs,
gonna say.
digs, digs against Miami. Like
Hmm. He's been eating.
Mixon against Tennessee. It's a brutal matchup.
Yep.
But Kittle against Arizona. I mean, Arizona's been awful against tight ends for what 3 straight years.
Hmm.
So we'll see. I think I am confident in Rick's team more. I do think this is going to be a little bit lower scoring also.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm pretty confident in Rick's team to kind of get this win and move to 3-1. Where are you at on this one?
We're in agreement on 4-4 right now. I mean, I agree. I think Rick's. I think Nils is a little top heavy. Obviously, I mean, besides the defense, the rest of his players are not necessarily flyers, but you're not necessarily really sure where you're going to get from them this week in terms of like a breakout game. So I agree. I think Waddle, if he plays, is going to have a good look. Cousins has been really, really consistent. Obviously, playing Carolina, I don't think that's he's going to have any issues in terms of keeping up what he's been doing early on. CD, I think the same way. He's been pretty steady, but I feel like he gets a decent game this week, unless um, that cornerback from New England's following him around because he's been like unstoppable. Got his name
Yeah,
off the top of my head
Gonzalez
right now.
Gonzalez
Thank you,
looks real
thank
good.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's
yeah,
been
he
really
looks
good.
good.
But yeah, I mean Gainwell, we're not sure. Obviously, I mean if they start blowing out Washington, he might get some junk time
Sure.
touches. And then Jaden Reed, like I said, I don't know if that's going to be his starting or not in the flex. Kind of more to come there. Obviously, he's got a couple options that he can slide in there. So I just like Rick's team slightly more. To
Hmm.
your point, obviously, any team starting with Mahomes is always always a nice start.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, the rest of his guys, to your point, I mean, Diggs has been eating all year. Mixon and Swift have looked solid. Kittle, Godwin has been steady, and then Puka, at least for another week, is probably going to still be getting his looks that he's been generating. So,
Sure.
yeah, I agree with you. I do think that's going to be slightly down, probably another around 100 points, I would guess, unless one of these guys gets some sort of huge week. But I'll give the slight edge again, like you said, to Rick there. So I think we're 4 for 4 matching up
Yep.
so
Yeah.
far. Yeah.
Yeah, let's move to your brother and
Ooh,
Ben.
tightest one
So
of the week. Yep.
yeah, I think this could be the match of the week.
Hmm.
But yeah, go for it. What do you want to kick this one off?
Sure,
What
I'll
are
fire away.
your
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I'll
where's
fire
your lean?
away.
Go for it.
This one's going to be. This is an interesting one because it really could go. I see it going either way, obviously based on projections. and just based on like matchups, I mean, Derrick Henry, does he bounce back? I mean, that's the big question mark probably for Ben. I mean, they play at home against Cincinnati. Does Cincinnati get it going, and they kind of abandon the run a little bit, Tennessee, to try to get back into that game. We'll see. Obviously, I think Josh Allen's going to have a good week this week. AJ Brown bounce back. Debo. I mean, yeah, I mean, really solid lineup. We talked about Laporta and our love for him. And then going on Anthony's side, I mean, Daniel Jones on Monday night against Seattle shouldn't be an issue, but obviously, he's kind of a hit or miss quarterback. The rest of his team's really, really solid, though. I mean, McCaffrey, Allen. I mean, those guys are the steady guys, and I mean, they're playing against Vegas and Arizona. Both of those guys, respectfully. I mean, you could have a big game against those guys. Could have a big game this week for sure.
Yeah.
So I gave the slight edge to Finkel.
Okay.
Again, I mean, obviously projections are leaning that way, but not necessarily factoring that in. I just think overall, I mean, just the names and the matchups. I mean, Mike Evans against New Orleans. He seems to always have that matchup against Marshawn Lattimore, obviously in that division. Goddard against Washington. I mean, I'm like I said, just kind of running through these matchups and these names. I think
Pretty
that
friendly.
he just has a I think a higher floor than Arby's this week. But again, I think it's going to be, to your point, probably the matchup of the week, and it's another really, really tight one.
Yeah, I'm going. I think this one's going to be the match of the week. I know projections kind of have it that way. I think both of these guys are going to put up close to 125, 130. I'm going to give the lean to Ben. The first time we're kind of splitting on this. I think Allen goes off against Miami. I mean, you already know where I stand on that. I think AJ Brown is gonna. I think he's gonna in line for a real good game against Washington. Debo against Arizona. Even Derrick Henry, if he gets maybe around, 70 yards, maybe he gets a touchdown. I do think Zach Moss is in a really good spot against the Rams, especially with Anthony Richardson likely coming back. And then Nico Collins, I think, can get there against Pittsburgh. They're just chucking it all over the yard. So if Houston's offensive line can kind of hold up, I think they just lost another backup. So I have no idea. I have no idea how they're even fielding five guys, but and then Pittsburgh at Houston, I think his defense could be an X factor. So I'm going to give a slight edge to Ben. But again, like I said, I think both of these teams are both real solid, and I think this is going to be the highest scoring matchup of the week. I will say, I think I think ETN's going to have a pretty big game against Atlanta. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember, and I didn't even look at it before, how Jacksonville normally fares in London.
Well, that's good. I didn't really factor the London. The London factor.
Yeah, it's true. The first one of the year.
Over there.
So
they've been over there a bunch.
First one of the year, and I think at a certain point, I do love Mike Evans, and he's been such a stud this year. I do think at some point Baker's going to start to come back to reality, and he's going to start to kind of settle in a little bit. But I mean, I think Daniel Jones is a huge X factor. I give the slight lean to Ben there. But again, I think both these teams are going to put up close to 130. So
another quick or very tight projection again, I guess, for the last matchup here in the pick'em. Riggs and White. Obviously 107, 106 is what it's projected now. Go ahead. I'll let you start this one off.
I just let me run down this quick. I'm gonna. It depends if Eckler plays. I'm gonna get, because that's such a huge X factor. I think if Eckler plays, I'll be pretty. It'll be tight. I may give the edge to Riggs. For this one though, I'm gonna give the edge to Phil. I think Stafford is, now I know Indy's D has been pretty solid. I think Stafford can get to maybe like 15, 17. I think Devontae against the Chargers secondary is just going to feast. I think Kenneth Walker against the Giants is a mismatch. And I think Travis Kelce is just going to abuse the Jets, especially with Taylor Swift in attendance. So
She's gonna be in New York this
Um,
week.
yeah, that's the rumor. She's going to be there, so it's probably
Good
going to
for him.
sell out and probably be half Chiefs fans, probably more. Did you see? Oh, side note, did you see all the jokes that like girls are making with their boyfriends and husbands and fathers that like Taylor Swift has like put Travis Kelsey on the map? Like just
Oh, really?
joking about that. Yeah, they're just like it's pretty awesome that they're putting Travis Kelsey on the map
That's
as like
funny.
a joke,
I
and
did see that he
I can't
had
get enough of that. It's very funny.
the highest grossing or the highest jersey sales after that game I
Yeah,
saw.
yeah, yeah,
Which
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I can already imagine that he's probably already doing pretty well in jersey sales just based on his
yeah.
personality and kind
Yep,
of how he's kind of blown up with the pod and all that
yep.
kind of stuff. But yeah, it's I mean it's all we kind of talked. I mean the media's just only
That's
talking
all they
about
can
that
talk
right now.
about. Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
I did actually give the slight edge to Phil as well here. Again, Eckler being a huge factor into this matchup for him, but kind of just running it down. I mean, I love Jordan Love. Like I said, I really hope that he has a good game this week as a personal Packer fan. But again, I think that's kind of a wash between him and Stafford. Um, Adams, I think, is Adams and Thomas, I should say, are just a little bit higher of a floor and ceiling than I think
yeah,
Devontae Smith and Tyler Lockett
yeah.
this week.
And
To your
yeah, I'm sorry to jump. I'm sorry to jump in.
no, no, go ahead, go ahead.
I think Thomas scores this week. I think he gets his first touchdown of the year.
Yep, and they're home, so I mean,
Yeah.
again, not knowing the car status, but Winston's obviously familiar with that offense.
Hmm.
Going just to running back here, obviously, definitely a big edge factor if Eckler plays. In terms of most art, Eckler and Gibbs, just the three running backs that Riggs is running with. But again, we don't know Eckler's status as of now on Wednesday night, so giving the slight edge, obviously, to him if Eckler plays. But going again, Travis Kelsey is a huge X factor for Phil
Hmm.
at the Jets on Sunday Night Football. And then again, Tutu Atwell has really I mean, he's been a steady 15-point scorer essentially for 3 weeks straight here.
Hmm.
So I give a slight edge to White. Again, Eckler might sway that matchup a little bit more if he's playing, but as it stands now, even with Eckler, I think I'd give a slight edge to Phil.
Yeah,
Again, going to be a super tight matchup, at least on paper here, but some
yeah,
heavy hitters for sure. And
yep,
Phil's got two, I mean, huge, trump cards essentially with Kelsey and Adams.
yeah,
Those guys can go up for, if Kelsey gets going, he could have a couple touchdowns for sure.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I mean, we ran
yep,
through it. I think the only matchup that we had switched was you had Arby's and I had Finkel, and
yep.
then everything else we pretty much ran with.
Pretty much,
Uh,
yeah, pretty much in lockstep.
well, it's cool. We
So
can maybe
yeah,
kind of keep this running for the year. Maybe kind of see where our pickums kind of fall on a
yeah,
week to week
yeah,
basis, and see if
yeah.
we
Well,
have any clue
I'll
what the
have
hell
to
we're
keep,
doing.
yeah, I'll have to keep track of them.
I
Um,
wrote them down, so I
oh,
have them
okay,
for at
cool,
least a week.
perfect,
Yeah.
awesome, awesome. Yeah,
Let's
it's
do a
funny. Yeah,
quick
go
little
for it.
run through the rankings before we wrap up. I mean, I know like I said, we're running a
Yeah,
little long because it's the first step, and
no, we're good.
we're cramming
And
roster lineups in.
we're off script, and yeah, we're dealing with
Oh
kids,
yeah,
and it's a whole thing.
well that's true.
Um,
But hey,
yeah. So, do you want to do like a power ranking?
yeah, we can do a power rank. I mean, I'll run. You want to go 1 through 12 each, and then like I'll go through, give you my 1 through 12, and you go your one through
Sure.
twelve.
Yeah, I don't have a 1 through 12, but I'll make it up on the fly. Go for it.
All right, I'll go first because I actually wrote this down because
Oh, okay, nice, perfect.
I had like 5 minutes before you jumped on, and
Yep,
I was kind
yep,
of just looking through and kind of figuring out. Um,
yeah,
I mean, regardless of roster, you got to give Riggs the number one seed. He's the only 3-0 team in the league.
yep,
Regardless of what his points against are, we kind of talked about that based on his last year. Kind of getting a little lucky, obviously, but luck's a huge factor a little bit with fantasy, as we know. Um, but solid points for, and the guy found ways to win. He's 3-0, so I'm going to keep him at the one spot.
yep,
Shifting a little bit now, we got a bunch of 2-1 teams, so it's kind of looking through rosters at this point. At least is kind of how I perceived it. I think earlier in the pod you had mentioned the Bandits being a team that you really liked. Hate to put them at the 2 spot because I'm playing them this week, but I have them at the 2 spot.
Do
I think
you? I do too.
I think his team is really, really solid.
Yeah,
Just top to bottom. I mean, I mean, not in love with necessarily his bench. I'm just going strictly on starting lineups, obviously, but um, he didn't have enough goose, I guess, or geese, I should say, during the draft, or maybe he did towards the end, but early on his draft, at least, through a couple of weeks, and factoring the trade as well with Nils, he's doing well
Huge
for
trade.
himself.
Yeah.
So I think I have him at 2. I got Tiburon at 3. I like Tiburon's roster. Usually I'm always like, there's always a WTF moment, like what the hell is Ryan doing in the draft? But I think a lot of his draft made sense, and he didn't really have a lot of factors where I'm like, why did he do that? Or that's a strange pick. He actually did some really, really good stuff throughout the draft. I love that stack with Andrews, and Lamar's really, I think he kind of broke out a little bit last week with at least the rushing part of it. So I really do like his team, and obviously, Bijan hasn't even really necessarily, I think, even scratch the surface. So really like Tiburon's lineup. I got Finkel at 4. I just think Anthony, obviously the quarterback hole is going to be his Achilles heel probably if Daniel Jones doesn't pan out. Obviously a lot of season left, and he could make a trade, pick up somebody. I mean, there's more to come, but I really like his starting lineup. Obviously, some really, really big weapons. Like some guys on his bench as well. So I had Anthony at 4. These ones were kind of interchangeable, but it just really essentially based on lineup here at this point. I got Bastards at 5. Again, like we say, perennial a team that's always in the hunt. I mean, like as we said, so nothing really more to be really said on his team overall. I mean, we talked about it. He's filled in the hole, obviously, with Robinson maybe for a week or two. Chubb's going to hurt. Anyone losing a guy like that or losing their first round pick is going to hurt. But he or she gets Saquon back in a week or two, and the rest of his lineup, I think, is pretty solid. I have Dre at 4, or I'm sorry, at 6. Dre at 6. I think Taylor, I mean, that's going to be his make or break, right? I mean, looking at his lineup here, we talked about it. He's got some heavy hitters. Rest of his lineup is, you would say, shaky a little bit. And his RB spot is definitely going to be the question mark if Taylor doesn't come back or gets traded or phased out of that lineup if he stays in Indy. So I think that's the biggest thing for him. But obviously, it's Tyreek and Jalen Hurts, so he'll be in every week just based on those guys scoring 50 points, a week probably. So I have him at 6. 7, I got Ship Lizard. I that was a toss up because I like Ship Lizard's lineup a little bit more than Andy, but just the firepower and the potential for Taylor to come back gave him a slight edge there. We talked about Rick's team, top to bottom is really, really solid. Puka's going to be interesting. Again, I do think he's still going to have a role in that offense with Kupp coming back. We'll see. I mean, like I said, a lot of mouths to feed, but Swift he really hit on Swift. Mixon, obviously nobody really behind him, so his running backs are kind of solidified. He's got a slew of receivers besides Diggs. Puka, obviously we just talked about. Godwin's been solid. He's Hopkins on the bench, even though that Tennessee's really hasn't done much. Going down next, I got Colombian
at 9 now.
At 9, yep, 9, I believe, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm sorry, 8. He would be the 8th spot. Yeah,
got it. Okay.
Just we already talked about Phil's roster. I think it's really, really solid. Again, he's hit on Kenneth Walker, which I think is a big hit for him in terms of RBs. Love his running backs, and we talked about the two. You got the number 1 tight end, and you can argue Adams might be the number 1 receiver. I mean, or number 2. I mean, the guy's so steady.
One of them. Yeah, for sure. Top 3 for sure.
Number 9, I have. I'm thinking Arby's.
I
think Arby's. Again, I was just kind of a surprise that he's at 1 and 2. I think his lineup's a solid lineup. I mean, Josh Allen hasn't really necessarily got off the ground yet. AJ Brown and Deebo we talked about are really, really, really probably one of the best wide receiver combos in the league in terms of fantasy purposes. Derrick Henry is going to really make or break, I think, his team. But again, to your point, he does have Spears. So, if they do phase him out, or do anything like that, he does at least have the backup. Sam Laporta was such a good hit for him. So I think his team's really, really solid. He was the guy I was debating between 9 and 10 because I have you at 10. 0-3, but I do like your team a lot. Do you think they're, to your point, I mean, you lost by 1 point in the first week. Kind of had a tough going a little bit last week, but Overall, I do think, top to bottom, I mean, you got a really, really solid team. And then I do like the Gabe Davis trade. Obviously, you have Ford, Kamara. I mean, we don't know yet, but I do
Yeah.
like your backs. And then you have Montgomery on the bench. So DK and Jefferson have been really, really solid for you as well. And like I said, I love Richardson. I think he could be a game changer if that offense, if he stays healthy and that offense keeps
Yeah.
playing the way that they're
Yep.
playing.
Yeah.
Uh, 11, I have Nils.
Okay.
I have the Creek. So we talked about it. He's drowning a little bit. His dam's breaking a little bit. He's just, Stevenson. His running backs are really his biggest question mark, I think, because I think his receivers are really, really solid. Tight ends are
Yeah.
good, and we talked about Kirk Cousins. So right now, I mean, Najee's killing him. He's obviously starting Kenneth Gainwell over him, so you know what his
Yeah.
confidence is in Harris. And like I said,
Yeah.
Stevenson hasn't got off the ground yet, and Zeke is starting to eat a little bit. So we'll see what happens with his Arby's, but
Hmm.
and then unfortunately, I got to put myself at 12. I mean, I'm 0-3, staring at
Yeah.
0-4. Not just
Yep.
strictly on roster, really, really just kind of where I'm trending. I mean, I have the least amount of points in the league.
Yeah.
Um, just having again sniffed the century mark. I think I had 94 in week 2. So it's been a
Yeah.
tough start for Green Bull. I mean, on paper, Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, would be Cooper Kupp, James Cook, Aaron
Yeah.
Jones, Cole Kmet, and Josh Jacobs. Not a team that you would run off and say that they're potentially going to be 0-4.
Right.
But we're really staring down the barrel of an 0-4 start. And I don't know. I mean, I'd have to really go through the record books, but I don't think anyone's ever come back and made the playoffs after starting 0-4. But
Yeah.
hey, crazier things have happened. So
Yeah. First time for everything.
there's my list.
Cool. Good shit. So full transparency, I don't have you at 12.
Oh, all right.
So
All
I'll
right.
start I'll start at 1. We actually had the exact same top 3.
Yep.
Just kind of doing it. I had Riggs, Bandits, and Tiburon as my top 3.
Mm-hmm.
To me, they're the clear top 3,
I
and
think
then
so.
there's kind of a tier break. Even though Logue is in second currently, and leads the league in points, I do think that overall, my confidence level, especially with Saquon's injury as it kind of goes along, um, if it lingers, might dwindle a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I love Tank Dell, but I don't know if I want to trust him in my lineup every single week.
I
And
agree.
I think that might be his plan right now, unless he moves Pickens. But I think
Mm-hmm.
just outside of that top 3, I do have him at 4.
Okay.
Um, then at 5, this is the biggest discrepancy we had. I have Arby's at 5.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Love
I
love that lineup.
think yeah, so I think
I don't hate it.
I really like um I really like Ben's team. I think Allen, Brown, Debo, and now Laporta is a really, really
Mm-hmm.
great 4 core.
Yep.
The defenses are never going to sink him, and I think that is a huge X factor with Pittsburgh and
Sure.
Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
And then having RBs that can just kind of fill in if need be. He has 4 pretty solid ones. Even Jalen Warren, who I like, has looked real freaking explosive. And if he
Mm-hmm.
continues to get more and more work, he's just gonna just continue to eat into Najee's workload. And I think Ben has the ability to really put up huge spike weeks, especially if Josh Allen kind of settles it in and starts to figure everything out. So I have Ben at 5.
Gotcha.
6, I have Rick. I think top to bottom, Rick's team might be one of my 3 favorite starting rosters outside of
Love Rex.
him, Aaron, and Ryan. I think top to bottom, those are the 3 best starting lineups in the league. At least in terms of what they can do on a weekly basis. I think his floor is super high. 7, I have Anthony, just solid right in the middle. And I think, overall, I think he has, 2 studs that, he really is is kind of relying on.
Mhm.
8, I have Phil.
Okay.
9, I have Andy. 10, I have myself. And like I said, I have you at 11, and that would mean that I have Nils
Beef
at 12. Yeah. Um,
snuck into the 11 hole. All right, I like it.
yeah. Kind of
Who's
kind
your
of
nine?
where Andy.
Okay.
I just think his weakest parts of his starting lineup are way weaker than Phil's, if that makes sense.
So you got White at 8, Colombian White at 8, Andy at 9. Who was your 10? I'm sorry.
Myself.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. I
And then
don't
I
have it.
have and then I have you at
Me
11
and Beef.
and
Yep.
Nils at 12.
So,
Reason being for Nils, I and if Nils ever hears this, Nils, I apologize. I hated the trade that Nils made with Aaron.
I mean, I would hope he listens to it. We put an hour and a half
Yeah,
into the damn
yeah.
thing.
Nils, if you're listening, I didn't like the trade.
Oh,
Um,
that's great.
I obviously value Sanders sort of, I think, kind of moving forward in a similar tier that I do Stevenson.
I
And
have
I
them
think
as a
I,
wash. Yeah.
yeah, and I think Olave, I would much rather have him than
Hmm.
London.
Yeah, I agree.
With Nils's team also, I think having the anchor of Najee Harris not filling in the RB2 spot is killing him.
Hmm.
Um, and also not really having anyone that can kind of fill in, I think is also hurting too. I think I love McLaurin as a player, but in terms of him being a flex option, I think is pretty hit or miss. And then,
Yeah, I
he's
agree.
just kind of hoping with his tight end with Fryermuth. I thought Fryermuth would be a lot better than he actually is. And relying on a defense week in and week out isn't always the thing that I want to do as your third best player, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I
So
agree. I definitely
that's kind
think
of where
he's
I'm at.
I think he's trending down a little bit. Yeah, like I said that earlier, I think. So I mean, yeah, I fully agree with your assessment there. I definitely
Yep.
actually I saw Aaron last week at the Thursday night quates, and I said the
Oh,
same thing.
nice.
I said that was definitely a win, I think, in your favor. Again, more to come. I mean, we'll see what happens. Injuries play a
Sure.
factor and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I think Olave just has such a higher floor and definitely a higher ceiling that to your point, I think shoring up his RB spot for Nils should be a priority for
Yeah.
sure.
Yep.
So yeah, more to come, but I like it.
Cool.
We'll try to run these power rankings every week.
Yep.
Pick'ems probably will be every week. Not much on the waiver wire, but we'll do something every week on the waiver wire and
Sure.
definitely condense this hopefully to 30, 40 minutes, maybe even
Yeah.
20 if we can try to get it down to. Yeah.
I think being the first one, kind of recapping everyone's team, kind of where things stand, I think was important. But yeah,
Absolutely.
totally into doing this weekly, and then hopefully we'll get a better platform. I'll kind of see what else we can do in
Yeah,
terms
we're gonna
of
play around with it. Yeah.
getting
Yep.
something. Maybe we can put some stuff. I think there's a few platforms where I'll be able to put something up on the screen quickly, where we can look at the league and kind of go in real
Oh,
time there and
that'd be great.
highlight each player as we kind
Hmm.
of talk about them, kind of see where things are at. But
Yeah, because I'd love to
yeah,
run some visuals like you said on yeah, like maybe we'll keep the records obviously of our pick'ems.
yeah,
Obviously throw up some power rankings like we just talked about that we can kind of cast out so people can kind of see where we're talking about or where we rank everybody. Again, hopefully we'll also get some try to get some managers on weekly. I think this
yeah,
Wednesday night thing is a great idea.
yeah,
Everyone can hopefully get it tomorrow or listen to it tomorrow prior to the week starting.
sure,
Um, and we can also recap, obviously, waiver moves and stuff like that after Tuesday night into Wednesday. So, yeah,
yep,
real fun, man. I'm really glad that we got to, kind of sit down and put this together. I think
yeah,
it'll be really fun to kind of sit down and each week knowing that Wednesday night's coming, we can
yeah,
kind of talk about it. Probably get ripped a little bit based on our opinions of certain
yeah,
teams, but
yeah, right, yeah,
everyone has their thoughts. I did rank myself as 12, so I don't want to hear any bullshit about,
yeah. There you go.
having my own team up.
Exactly. You're
But
definitely humble for sure. But
but yeah, man,
I
it's
dig it,
cool.
man. Yeah, cool.
For a
Well,
fun time.
I'll get this out to the league. I'll just send the link. If people
Okay,
wanna check that out, I'll get the recording
cool.
link and I'll post that in the league page. And then yeah, man, good luck tomorrow to the
Thanks,
pack and
brother.
your team. And
Yeah.
then yeah, we'll see what happens. Hopefully you can get a dub and you don't go 0-4. Same with me.
Well, likewise. Yeah. I mean, 0 and
Yeah.
4. I didn't think I was going to start the season that way, even without Cup. But
Yeah, no
yeah,
one
we'll
ever
see.
does.
Yeah. I mean,
But
you're the returning champ, so I mean, I didn't expect you to start 0 and 4. I actually really liked your team when you drafted it, but
yeah,
yeah, crazy,
we'll
crazy
see.
things happen.
Yeah,
All right,
we'll
buddy.
see, man. Cool. Well, I appreciate everyone listening. If you do listen to the inaugural 20 minutes tops, it's was very over 20, but we're good.
What are we at? What are we at? Hour
Anyway,
20?
yeah, no, we're good. But
Cool.
yeah, dude, we'll get on every week and then yeah, looking forward to it. Hope you have a good rest of your week, bud, and a good week 4. Get a dub.
Absolutely. You too, buddy. We'll catch you
All right.
later.
See you, bud.
See you, bud.